In 1386, the people of Paris gather to watch a trial by combat between knights Jean and Jacques, with the king, Lord Pierre, Marguerite, and their companions looking on. As the knights ride forward to begin the duel, the story rewinds. Jean's perspective starts in 1370 during the Caroline War. Pierre orders Jean's unit to hold a bridge because the enemy outnumbers them, but Jean refuses to retreat and charges ahead with his men. The battle is brutal, and Jacques nearly dies before Jean saves him. They win, but abandoning the bridge causes their allies to lose their own fights, leaving Pierre furious and sending them home. By 1377, Jean and Jacques swear allegiance to Pierre after the king grants him control of the region. Later, Jacques visits Jean as Pierre's new debt collector. Jean can't pay, so Jacques agrees to speak to Pierre on his behalf, asking only for a few coins in return. In 1380, Jean wants to return to battle, but Jacques objects. Jean has already lost his wife and son, and if he dies without an heir, everything he owns will pass to Pierre. Jean also points out that Pierre favors Jacques now, and explains he isn't fighting just for glory. He needs the money because he's nearly broke. Jean wins this new battle, and when he returns home, he meets Sir Robert, a former enemy who has been pardoned and now provides supplies and shelter to the troops. Jean also meets Robert's beautiful daughter, Marguerite, and quickly asks for her hand. During the dowry negotiations, Jean requests the valuable estate of Anneux-le-Faucon. Robert hesitates but eventually agrees, and Jean and Marguerite marry in a joyful celebration. Jean enjoys their wedding night, but Marguerite is quietly disappointed. Sadly, Jean never receives Anneux-le-Faucon. Pierre buys the estate from Robert and gifts it to Jacques as a reward for handling his finances. Jacques insists he never asked for it, but Jean remains furious. The estate means a lot to Marguerite because of her childhood memories there, so Jean promises to fight for it. Jean brings the matter to the king, but his petition is denied. Pierre is angered that Jean tried to sue him, and soon finds a chance for revenge. When Jean's father dies, the captaincy that should pass to Jean is instead given to Jacques. After assuring his mother Nicole she can live with him, Jean confronts Pierre at a party. Later, he tells Marguerite that he spoke calmly, reminded Pierre of his family's long history with the captaincy, but Pierre still refused. Jean believes Jacques has been whispering against him and is hurt that his former friend never defended him. As a result, Jean and Marguerite are no longer welcome at court. A year later, Marguerite receives an invitation to a celebration for a friend's firstborn. She thinks enough time has passed for them to return to court and show they've moved forward despite the injustice. Jean agrees to attend. At the gathering, he and Jacques reconcile, and Jean tells Marguerite to kiss Jacques as a gesture of goodwill. She does so awkwardly. In 1385, Jean goes to battle again. They lose, but he is still knighted for his service. When he returns home, Marguerite greets him with a hug and worries about his illness. Jean ignores the fever and insists on going to Paris to collect his pay and report to Pierre, encouraged by Nicole. After receiving his gold, Jean comes home to find Marguerite cold and distant. Later that night, when Jean tries to be intimate, Marguerite refuses and finally explains what happened. Nicole had ignored Jean's order not to leave her alone and went out with all the servants. Jacques used the opportunity to slip into the house and force himself on her. Jean holds Marguerite, apologizes for failing to protect her, and vows to make Jacques answer for it. The next day, Jean tells the town council and asks them to spread the news so Pierre will be forced to grant them an audience. Nicole objects, fearing gossip and shame. Jean then goes to the king and requests a trial by combat, letting God decide the truth. The advisors warn that if he loses, Marguerite will suffer too, but Jean believes her completely. Months later, the trial opens at the Palace of Justice. Jean formally accuses Jacques of the crime against his wife and throws down his glove, demanding combat if Jacques refuses to confess. The story then rewinds to show Jacques' perspective. During the 1386 battle, when Jean charges forward, the army hesitates. After failing to warn Jean that he's rushing into a trap, Jacques rallies the others to follow him in the king's name. Later, Jacques keeps his promise and speaks to Pierre about Jean's rent, even defending Jean from Pierre's insults. Jacques believes Jean is loyal and honorable, but Pierre warns him not to stay blind forever. From then on, Jacques and Pierre grow close. Jacques attends Pierre's dinners, shares in his pleasures, and eventually handles Pierre's financial troubles. He takes on the job of pressuring the lords to pay their dues, which is how he secures Anne le Faucon from Robert, before even hearing about Jean's engagement to Robert's daughter. Pierre still sees Robert as a traitor, so the wedding becomes another strike against Jean. When Jacques tells him that Jean is suing them, Pierre only laughs, reminding Jacques that he warned him about Jean's so-called loyalty. Pierre then decides to give the captaincy to Jacques. He notes that Jean will be furious, but Jacques doesn't object. The day Jacques receives the captaincy is the same day Jean storms into the celebration, shouting in anger. Jacques tries to pull him aside to talk, but Jean refuses and threatens to sue again. Pierre shuts him down with mocking remarks, and the crowd laughs as Jean leaves in humiliation. When the invitation to the firstborn celebration arrives, Pierre doesn't want to attend and wants Jacques to skip it too. Jacques insists on going because Jean will be there, and he feels it's time to mend things, especially since he was godfather to Jean's late son. Pierre still thinks Jacques is being naive. At the party, Jacques sees Marguerite for the first time. Since Jean rarely lets her leave the house, her beauty immediately captures his attention, and her awkward kiss leaves an impression as well. Later, Jacques tries to befriend her, and the two share a deep conversation about literature. Surprised by his growing feelings, Jacques convinces himself Marguerite doesn't belong with Jean, an illiterate man who in Jacques' mind can't appreciate her. For the rest of the day, Jacques watches her closely, misreading her polite smiles as encouragement. In the following weeks, Jacques becomes obsessed with Marguerite. He dreams about her and can't stop staring whenever he spots her at the market. When Jean later reports to Pierre after the battle that earned him knighthood, Pierre mocks him in front of everyone. Jacques tries to quietly support him, but Jean snaps at him for using his name instead of Sir, and accuses him of enjoying Pierre's favors while avoiding real combat. Knowing Jean isn't home, Jacques goes to see Marguerite with a plan. He sends a friend to the door pretending to need help, and when Marguerite opens it, Jacques slips inside. He confesses his feelings, but she rejects him immediately. After pushing his friend out, Jacques follows Marguerite through the house, ignoring her refusals and noticing she removes her shoes before going upstairs. In the bedroom, he grabs her, throws her onto the bed, and forces himself on her despite her repeated no. When it's over, Jacques tells her not to tell Jean, claiming Jean might kill her, and insists she shouldn't feel guilty because they couldn't help themselves. After the assault, Jacques goes to church to confess, and the priest tells him it is simply a test. As rumors spread, Pierre questions him, and Jacques denies everything. He claims Marguerite only protested out of custom, and that it wasn't against her will. Pierre isn't fully convinced, noticing Jacques has been acting strangely, so Jacques insists he is overwhelmed by a powerful love. Pierre accepts this version and advises him never to repeat it publicly, since people would never understand such nuance. Jacques must deny it until the end. Pierre later tries to clear Jacques' name before the council, but it's useless once they learn the king has granted a trial. Jacques is even offered the benefit of clergy to avoid judgment, but he refuses because he doesn't want to appear cowardly. On the day of the hearing, Jacques denies all charges and picks up Jean's glove, accepting the duel. The story then restarts from Marguerite's perspective, the true one. On her wedding day, Jean is furious that Anne le Faucon isn't included in the dowry, but Robert convinces him to marry her anyway because she is healthy and likely to produce strong heirs. Marguerite is anxious on their wedding night. Jean is satisfied, but she is not, though she lies and says she is. At the party where she first meets Jacques, she acts extra friendly to help Jean regain favor at court. While talking with the other women at the party, including her friend Marie, Marguerite admits Jacques is handsome, but reminds them that Jean doesn't trust him. Her polite smiles are meant to show Jean that kindness works better than anger, but Jacques mistakes them for romantic interest. When Jean first leaves for battle, Marguerite is put in charge of the estate. For the first time, she has real responsibility, and she begins to feel alive again. She treats the servants and tenants with more compassion than Jean ever did, but she still can't escape Nicole's constant judgment, who keeps calling her a bad wife for failing to conceive. As time passes, the tension between Jean and Marguerite grows. She still hasn't produced an heir, and she finds no pleasure in their nights together. She visits a doctor, who explains she suffers from melancholia, leaving her cold and dry. He also tells her that reaching pleasure is necessary for pregnancy. Marguerite admits she isn't sure she's ever experienced it. The doctor claims that if she thought their nights were enjoyable, then she has already felt the little death, but she remains doubtful. Later, while shopping for a dress with Marie, Marguerite confesses her marriage is struggling. When Jacques passes by and bows, both women agree he is handsome but also inappropriate. When Jean returns from war, Marguerite greets him in her new dress, but instead of a hug, Jean scolds her for the low neckline, accusing her of looking like a harlot. Later, Nicole criticizes the dress too. But this time, Marguerite stands her ground, and surprisingly, Jean supports her. However, when he says he's leaving soon to get paid, he reminds Nicole not to let Marguerite leave the house, which upsets her because she had hoped to visit her friends. When Jacques arrives that day, events play out similarly, but he is far more aggressive toward Marguerite and openly insulting toward Jean. Marguerite doesn't remove her shoes as a sign of interest. She loses them while trying to run from him. In the bedroom, she fights with everything she has, screaming and crying nonstop, showing clearly how terrified and violated she is. After Jacques leaves, Marguerite tries to bathe to wash away his seed, but Nicole and the servants return before she can. From then on, Marguerite grows withdrawn and barely eats. Marie visits and announces she is pregnant, which makes Marguerite cry, though she pretends it's out of joy. When Jean finally returns and Marguerite tells him what happened, he reacts with rage and even grabs her by the neck. She insists she's telling the truth, so he releases her, but ignores her pain, assuming Jacques acted only to spite him. Through tears, Marguerite pleads that she wants to speak out, but needs his support, because no one will believe her without it. Jean agrees, but only if she spends one more night with him, so Jacques won't be the last man to know her. After Jean brings the case to the council, Marie begins avoiding Marguerite. She doesn't believe her because she remembers Marguerite once saying Jacques was handsome. Marguerite later argues with Jean, upset that the story is spreading as gossip, but Jean insists it's the only way to force Pierre, who controls the court, to grant a trial. Nicole later scolds Marguerite for speaking out, claiming she has brought shame on the family. She insists the truth doesn't matter and reveals that the same thing happened to her when she was young, but she stayed silent to protect herself. Months later, when the trial finally begins, Marguerite is pregnant. The judges question her harshly, trying to portray her as a liar. They remind her she once called Jacques handsome and point out she is suddenly pregnant after years of failing to produce an heir. Believing the myth that a woman must enjoy the act to conceive, they accuse her of carrying Jacques' child and suggest she must have liked it. Marguerite firmly denies this, explaining that abuse can never be pleasurable. Since the judges can't reach a decision, the king approves the duel. Before leaving, the judges tell Marguerite that if Jean loses, she will be burned alive. She is shocked Jean never warned her, but she still agrees to move forward because she knows she is telling the truth. After the hearing, Jean publicly argues with Marguerite, jealous after learning she once described Jacques as handsome, claiming she embarrassed him before the king. Marguerite fires back, reproaching him for hiding the punishment from her and for using her suffering as a tool to settle his grudge against Jacques. The night before the duel, Marguerite gives birth to a healthy baby boy. It is the happiest moment of her life, but she fears he may grow up an orphan if the duel ends badly. She also wonders whether she would have stayed silent to protect her child if he had been born earlier. The next morning, Marguerite is brought to the arena in chains. She declares her truth once more before the duel begins. Jean and Jacques start with jousting, then switch to fighting on foot after being unhorsed. At first, the match is even, but Jacques soon gains the upper hand and stabs Jean in the thigh. Jean refuses to surrender. When he collapses, he stays down deliberately, waiting for Jacques to move in. As Jacques approaches, Jean sweeps his legs, bringing him down, then pins him and demands a confession. Jacques still denies everything, so Jean kills him. Marie and Pierre are left humiliated for backing the wrong man. Marguerite is freed from her chains and brought into the arena, where Jean embraces her and presents her to the cheering crowd. The couple then rides out together as the town celebrates their victory. Jacques' body is tied to a horse, dragged across the ground, and later displayed upside down in public. Marguerite's son grows up healthy and strong. Jean dies a few years later in the Crusades, and Marguerite takes control of the estate, living peacefully and choosing never to remarry. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.